get started. So, yeah, our today's topic is the European electrification dilemma, how we call it. So, we're gonna talk and answer a couple of questions throughout the talk just now, basically focusing on the EV adoption within Europe, as we also see strong deltas, and going to emphasize a bit on how the deviations are that we see within Europe. We will also go then deep dive more into the reasons for EV adoption that we see and why we see also such a strong deviation, and specifically also some of the reasons in our point of view why it is slower than we originally anticipated a couple of years back. And then, of course, along with that, going more in the discussion of next generation battery technology. So for example, solid state technology, is that really necessary, or do we already have achieved some good enough solutions that are basically sufficient for the performance or ranges that are required, or what is really needed? We will also then deep dive more into the competitive landscape and cost competitiveness specifically for Europe, or we've brought some examples for the US as well, how we see those deltas compared to China, as this is one of the main points throughout the conversation as well. And then, of course, go more into how do we see the battery demand developing, along with the EV adoption that we see on the market, as well as the chemistry splits that we are expecting in our point of view. And then, of course, we're going to conclude with some insights on what it actually would take for the European battery industry to increase competitiveness as well. So with that, I would first of all hand over to Otmar. He will go through a bit on the electrification penetration within Europe, and then follow up later on.
Hello, everybody. So if you look on Europe, it's a very widespread of electrification percentage. So outstanding numbers you see in the northern countries, led by Norway. They almost achieved 100% of BEV share. And on the other hand, if you look on the southern countries or southeast of Europe, you are down in a few percentage of market share. So the picture is really not homogeneous over Europe. So Germany is somewhere in the middle, catching up now with in 2026. So but still by far not in the numbers of where we see Norway or China. So and what are the reasons behind that? So on one hand, it's the charging infrastructure. So you see that especially in the southeastern countries and in the south, charging infrastructure is pretty poor. So you nevertheless it's very good in Germany, it's very good in the Netherlands and Switzerland and Austria, but at least if you scale it to charges per 100 kilometer, Norway and Sweden and Denmark not, or at least Norway and Sweden are not on that level, like Germany. So in Germany, if you look on that, you would have enough charger density, so you need no range anxiety or something like that. But there is still not the amount of BEVs initially expected by today. And I think what was really completely underestimated is that BEVs are not just another powertrain technology, like if you switch from diesel to gasoline or something like that. It's a huge transformation for the whole industry and for the whole infrastructure. And so initially, sure, it's cost. So BEVs are more expensive, still are more expensive today than comparable combustion engine vehicles. But it's not the only reason. And one reason behind is that it's a lot of emotions and fears behind this technology, and this is not was underestimated for a very long time by the OEMs, what they have to care of if they really want to have, and also on the political side, if you really want to have a very high market penetration on BEVs. So you have to take away the fear of range, of charging, and of safety, and all this was not done in a consequent way. And one part which is really, in my opinion, key to that is that the dealers, they are typically the window to the customers, and they have not been in the focus so that they support this transformation. And also in the beginning, a lot of the e-mobility, there were a lot of questions from the customer, and there are still a lot of questions from the customer, and the dealers are not the first to address this in a proper way. So there are some outstanding ones, but I think the high mass of the dealers don't support the transformation. And so I think this is one of the key issues. Then we have, as I showed before, very inhomogeneous support of the politicians and the politics in general. So this is also a very good picture you see in the charging infrastructure. But also we have switching on and off subsidies. Germany is a very good example on that. In the meantime, I think we have subsidies all over Europe, so that looks pretty good. So that's why BEVs are significantly increasing now. So I'm looking with some hope into the future, because if we look to the sales in 2026, it's up significantly in Europe, in almost all countries. There are very low exemptions like Belgium or Luxembourg with a few percents down, but all the other countries saw double-digit increase. So I'm looking with some hope into the near future, and I'm wondering when we achieve 30% market share of the BEVs. And then I will hand over back to Ines.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Otmar. And yeah, with that, I also want to show so what we like to look into, and unfortunately, there is no 2026 version yet of the TIF mobility study, and also some reasons behind where they do also a larger study on what the main reasons are why people not purchase an EV. And I think it goes a bit along with what Otmar has said. So it's mostly on the purchasing costs still, which are the main drivers. But still some parts in terms of range anxiety that is out there and from end customer perspective, not necessarily the key driving or dominating factor on charging infrastructure or safety, as one could believe. So it's really more in the direction on cost or range. And with that, we go a bit more into the battery technology, what we believe is necessary, because, of course, what are the potentials if we talk about increasing the range is, of course, first of all, in the last years, we have seen a lot of improvements on the cathode side by increasing in high nickel chemistries. But as specifically or specifically cost pressure is increasing on the market, we see a lot more dynamics also on the LFP end. But besides, let's say, looking into cathode chemistries, of course, the next potential when we are, let's say, already at the threshold for increasing energy density on NMC, we also have the anode as a potential, which is integration of silicon or lithium metal. Lithium metal, of course, seen as the holy grail, but with limitations on technology side, you have to combine it with solid electrolytes in order to avoid dendrite formation. So that's, of course, the next steps for increasing energy density on that level. With, of course, here saying the maturity of the technology is definitely lower than originally or than the state-of-the-art technologies, where also some improvement potential still possible, especially if you slowly increase silicon shares, for instance. And with that, we also, when we talk about what might be really necessary or what technology is really necessary for which application, we have to consider the different needs of market applications. Of course, the key focus here, we're talking about EVs and BEV application, but also here we have to differentiate between entry level and low cost passenger vehicles, or if it goes more in the premium EV section, where also different technologies are better suited than others. And specifically, if we stay on highway, all the commercial vehicle sector, it's also then with different requirements and needs for energy density. And then also similar story when it comes to off-highway application, energy storage that are actually not even in the need for high energy density and rather concentrating on stable and high cycle life performance. And also when it comes to more agriculture logistic applications, where it's not as important as you would have it for premium EVs, or specifically in the aviation sector, where it's then even more mandatory. And with that, we also define on what technology solutions are actually suitable for which application. And here we see still a strong diversification in the technologies, which is the attraction or the increase more of the interest on sodium ion. We just recently also heard news with, I think, 60 gigawatt hours. So from CATL concentrating on sodium ion and building up the gigafactories, with focusing on that. But also the increasing importance of LFP technology, along with some mid-nickel chemistries for those applications who are in the need of, let's say, not as high of energy densities as for others. And then when we talk about potentials, for example, high nickel chemistries or also solid state technology, this is more than in the region where it comes to those applications who are really in the need of high performance and energy densities. Where this is then has a better potential and better suited for those applications. Not saying that LFP is not suitable for premium vehicles. I think that's still hard to keep in mind because cost is the one of the most important factors to consider, specifically as of today with the Chinese competition. But also having some premium and high performance option is still very important in that area. Good. And with that, looking more into what is actually possible with the technologies we have as of today and also how the development was, I hand over to Otmar once more on the vehicle level to say how the developments have been in the last year roundabout.
So, and I just would like to explain first what we call the P3 charging index. So we try to measure the customer benefit of fast charging, and so it's not only the charging power, but it addresses also the efficiency of the vehicle, and you see there has been a huge progress in the past years. We started with a target value of 1, and today we almost doubled it. And with the latest development from Mercedes or BMW, we are within a very short time we can charge more than 500 kilometers. So that's really very big progress, and for the even for frequent long distance drives, this is very convenient numbers. And what we also see, this comes not only in the upper class like BMW or Mercedes. You can see it also from the Chinese brands with the latest developments from BYD, and this is really impressive. What can be charged within a very short time, and so I think this really is in one a big game changer, because it allows to build affordable sized batteries in vehicles, and have it recharged very fast, like refueling. So that's what customers are used to, and I think that's the main message, that we are now on a technological level with fast charging, also for LFP, that it can be widely introduced, and there is no further hurdle to a great acceptance of BEVs.
Great. And yeah, so I think one more point that we would like to address here is on the cost competitiveness. I mean, we have seen now that charging network, or especially also then charging performance and the improvement in range is not necessarily the key driver. It's more getting on the awareness of end customers to have a better confidence in the performance and the ranges that EVs are capable of. I think the next point is really important, because cost competition is one of the key factors. And if we look on costs that are offered from Chinese companies or Chinese, with Chinese technologies, we are even below $50 a kilowatt hour if we consider it on the cell level now, where we've done the analysis. And just to reflect the differences on what it would actually mean to consider a European local cost structure, it's mostly, if we There it goes here. If we consider full European supply chain, as well as European manufacturing locations, and energy, then it's almost doubled to a range where the costs that can be expected if you consider full European solutions. So that's really the key struggle also at the moment, to get cost competitive, to provide also some local solutions. And if we look on the US, it's also actually very similar. And what we would like to address and point out here as well is, of course, even if you would consider, for example, a Chinese cell that is imported to the US, including all the tariffs and additional payments that need to be done, even there, we would also still see, let's say, not a major impact in terms of cost deviation if you would produce locally. So I think here also the benefit on getting a cell from Asia is still attractive from a cost perspective, to consider, or not necessarily to consider, local solutions. So that's definitely one point where Europe, but also the US, strongly needs to work on in order to provide competitive solutions on their own and not to rely fully then on any Chinese or subsequently Asian technologies as well. And if we then go further on, especially the cost situation that also changed and impacted the market in our point of view as well on a very strongly, because the rise and the discussion for LFP becomes very dominant, and is one of the main drivers as well for the adoption or the stronger adoption of LFP on the Western markets that we see. We do see some, that's also highlighted in a dashed line, some drawbacks and still scenarios where we say, okay, the Western EV market is still struggling in terms of EV adoption, as we have explained in the very beginning, due to the following reasons, but also, so even that can impact, and also then it changed pretty strongly in the demand in terms of how nickel chemistries are developing, or how the split of the chemistries and nickel chemistries are developing in future on either the European or the US market, and how dominant and strong LFP technologies are also going to evolve, which is even goes beyond 50% in our point of view, because even for premium EVs, LFP is a valid solution and option, not on a full coverage, but still for some cheaper, to offer cheaper solutions on the overall vehicles, it's quite an important factor to consider. And with that, I would like to conclude and leave some room for also questions as well. Due to this cost competitiveness and the let's say, hurdles in terms of getting cost competitive on the Western markets, it's very important that we have a strong collaboration from the three perspectives in the Western markets, which is, on the one hand side, we still gonna need a strong R&D and development, so that we don't that we keep up in terms of innovation, next generation development for the specific solutions, as well as for the automotive industry, which is in a good shape in our point of view, where we are very strong and have good technologies and options and offerings. But of course, also on the industry and this side, where especially in Europe, I think it's a year of truth at the moment that we're facing with cell manufacturing in specific, with PowerCo, ACC, Verkor in their ramp up phase, and have to prove that they are capable of large scale production and industrialization as well. So we need the commitment of players also for large scale manufacturing and industrialization. And of course, it doesn't rely only on cell manufacturing, also for the full value chain, to get a local supply solution and to strengthen also the local supply chain. But of course, as we have seen on the cost consideration and the cost points that we have shown before, it is super important as well that we have political or sufficient political support in terms of funding, streamlining, permitting processes, so on and so forth, so that it really also supports localization and the establishment of a local Western supply chain, be it in the US or be it also in Europe. And it needs to address as well an end-to-end point of view. So it has to address from raw material manufacturing all the way down to the end customer, actually, who buys an EV, similar to the IRA as well, that kind of, so that everyone in the value chain can somehow participate and benefit from the support in order to really build a sustainable value chain also locally. And with that, I would stop and give you the chance as well to ask some questions if there are any, and want to thank you, of course, as well for listening. Anyone who wants to start?
Yeah, maybe a question from my side. I have already written it down in the chat, but I'm not satisfied with the answer or the reply. It's about when we are estimating the costs, how do you quantify the quality aspects? Because if you get a battery from Asian supplier, it works for 5 years. If somebody is in Europe, like earlier example was the custom cells, which is bankrupt now. But if you see the cells from them in 10 years, they're going to perform really well. So instead of paying 2 times to an Asian supplier, you're going to pay 1 times to an European supplier. So do you consider, how do you, if at all somebody wants to quantify this, how can one do it? And
So on that, so seen some in
Was that just on my end? Sorry, Otmar, I think you lost the connection.
Yeah. So now I think it should work again.
Perfect.
First of all, in the meantime, the quality of the big Chinese and Asian cell suppliers are really very good. So this is so CATL and BYD, so they are really on the top level. So this is on one hand, and second, we did a lot of investigations at P3 together with Avilo, which is an Austrian startup, and analyzed the field data of current BEVs, and we have seen that the remaining state of health is well beyond 90%. It's more in the 95% region, and so I think quality, at least of the battery pack, is not an issue anymore. So it has been. I'm in the EV industry for decades almost, and I know initially. So the first lithium-ion battery pack with LMO and stuff like that. So they really had calendar life issues and stuff like that. But what you get since about 3 to 4 years, based on nickel chemistry or now LFP, you need to have no fear about quality. At least on the cell side, there might be some issues on pack side, but this can be fixed.
Yeah. And with the cost, I think, of course, you can always consider TCO calculations of that. But yeah, I'm with Otmar. So it's basically not the case anymore that you get worse quality when the batteries are somehow coming from Asia or China. So it's definitely competitive if you'd get local solutions here.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? We can still use 2 minutes if there are any questions.
Maybe one question from my side, if I may. So for consumers, buying an electrical car, a BEV, is an investment for a longer term. So how would you value the importance of political kind of guardrails, the situation of lobbying from OEMs, but also kind of reports in the media and the press that influences the customer to decide for or against buying a BEV?
So I didn't get the question properly, but I think today I think it's a little bit dependent on. So there is not the customer, huh? So there,
sure.
And I think that's the challenge. Yeah? Maybe you are familiar with various steps in market introduction. So early adopters and then fast followers and so on. And I think in Europe we are now in a critical phase. So I think the early adopters we have covered pretty well, huh? And so they are eager to go into new technologies. And now I think we have to find to do the next step to a broader acceptance of battery electric vehicles. And I think every support on that, is it improving charging infrastructure? Is it incentives? Is it support by various media? I think that all will help to raise the BEV, the number of BEVs bought by customers. So I think there are a lot of single steps which lead to a higher country market share.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And maybe 2 sentences on, there was a question in the chat as well on how we monitor solid state technologies. So I think overall we're a technology consulting company, so we look into everything that is kind of being electrified in different applications and different technologies as well. So of course we also continuously looking into solid state battery. In general, there's always a yearly conference in Chicago, where we also typically attend and get into conversations with all the participants. So I think we have a good view in the industry in general. We do some teardowns of technologies also for solid state cells to look into it if it's really promising or if it's really delivering what it promises, to see if it's really solid state. So that's another factor that how we monitor and look into that. But yeah, typically we work case by case, depending on what some key questions of clients or companies are.
Yeah, but definitely we will not need solid state to achieve the breakthrough of electric e-mobility. So I think the technologies we have current in the market, they fulfill customer needs.
Right. All right, there is one hand.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's me
go
again.
ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just a quick question about the scaling and production, like the slide number 6. I see a couple of known names like PowerCo, ACC, but why would they? You were there already, actually. But anyway,
Sorry.
number 6. But
Ah,
my question is very simple. Why would anybody in German or in European side would invest such a huge amount of money knowing the failure rates of like Northvolt and Marrow and all these battery companies? So what would make sense to invest now, whether it's personal money like a private money or the government money? Why would anybody should support? Because the price difference is so high. Maybe
yeah.
90% of the batteries would still keep on coming out of Asia. Maybe just like AI, like almost 90% of the AI would be coming out of USA. So does it still, who's gonna take the risk? That's the question.
So the only motivation could be, and I think that must start on a EU political level. Is there an interest to have at least to some degree independent value chain in Europe, starting from the raw material up to the cell production? I think if this is of interest, then you need the legal framework in Europe to start something like that. So this is what Ines also already addressed with the IAA, so the Industrial Accelerator Act. But I think, this is still under big discussion in Europe and not finalized yet. But that's finally the only motivation that like the last US administration did with the IRA, finds a European counterpart with the IAA, but this is not finalized yet.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we see from the industry. They are struggling and hesitating in further investing. I think the industry is pretty burned from the failure of Northvolt that happened. And that's what makes it really challenging for other European manufacturers. That does not necessarily have to mean that they are doing the same mistakes. So I think that's important to get a better awareness also from investor perspective, that the industry can learn and that not necessarily everyone is doing same mistakes, what led to the failure of Northvolt. So I think those are very important points as well. Why it is important to keep fighting along with the support, political support, to have further investments and to continue in order to also have still a local supply chain available and not to be fully dependent on Asia. And I think with the importance globally on resilient supply chains also for Europe, it is of interest from also European Union to have local solutions, where I think we slowly get in the direction that there are still, again, some willingness to further invest in batteries and electrification overall.
All right. Thank you. Fingers crossed
For
the
sure.
future.
Great. All right. And then thank you so much for attending and also for sparing a couple of minutes more, but we started later, so I think it's fair to had a slightly extension as well. If you are interested in any further questions, please feel free to reach out to Otmar or myself. We do have the contacts as well on the back side, so happy to take a screenshot of the contacts, so you can reach us anytime.